Welcome to the video about the Jewish people in exile. This PowerPoint will take you through some historical developments that explains about the Jewish encounter with the Babylonians through the Persians. So let's get started. Here's a picture of the Babylonian Empire. I just want you to notice what a massive empire this was. Here is the Persian Gulf, modern day Iraq, goes all the way up through modern day Iran, southern Turkey, all of the Levant, a good portion of Saudi Arabia, and Egypt. This was the biggest empire of its day. These were fierce people. They were great conquerors and great military leaders. Here are some dates for you with the Babylonian encounter with the southern kingdom of Judah. There were about 10 years of crises. You don't need to know all of the nitty-gritty historical details, but you do need to know the broad picture, which this will tell you. There was an initial wave of deportation. So remember, the Babylonians took into exile the upper elite and like the merchant class because they wanted to bring wealth into their empire. There was one wave of deportations in 597, and then 10 years of uneasy peace between 597 and 587. In the second round of deportations, there was massive destruction. The temple was destroyed, and we've talked about some of the ramifications of the temple being destroyed, namely that the common sense in the ancient world told the people that the Babylonian God was greater than the Jewish God. So in essence, Yahweh is defeated, Yahweh's throne and house no longer exists. So this would have caused, great anguish and loneliness for the people, especially as they're being taken away from their home. So the Babylonian exile then, what do you think they experienced as they were moved into Babylon? Now remember, the very poor are left behind in Judah, but many of the elite are taken into exile. So undoubtedly, while they were there, they encountered new gods, they encountered religious propaganda and religious competition. So we're going to look at just a little bit of the propaganda that they may have encountered. Here is the chief Babylonian god, whose name is Marduk. So just notice Marduk here. He's very stylized. He's really big, ornate dress. He's on this dragon, which is a symbol of this god. So this might have been an icon that the Jewish people would have seen as they settled into their new home. Here's just some other iconography of Marduk. So you'll notice that dragon-like creature in the middle. I mean, it's a mythical creature. And Marduk as the god on either side. So that's the animal that Marduk is associated with. Let's look at another one. Here's the Ishtar Gate, and this is the reproduction that is currently housed in the Berlin Museum. It's very worth going to. I just want you to see how gigantic this gate was. So if Jewish people are entering through this gate as they're entering into the Babylonian Empire to live and to settle, you can imagine how grand this is, how small the people would have felt. And automatically they're entering into a gate that is filled with religious iconography. How would they have felt about that as being Yahweh worshipers? Let's look at another goddess here. So this is Ishtar. She is a very ancient goddess. She is worshipped for millennia throughout Mesopotamia. A version of her was also worshipped in ancient Canaan where the Jewish people were. So they might have been familiar with another version of Ishtar. She's associated with owls that you can see. She has these wings and this kind of fancy headdress, and she's often depicted nude. And so she is a goddess of fertility. So these are just two of the gods and goddesses there would have been many more in Babylon. Here is Psalm 37, and we listened to a little bit of a song, and I'm just going to play a few seconds of it for you here so you can get the flavor of this. This is a modern setting of this very ancient psalm. Sorry, one more time.
Babylon. We lay down and wept for thee, Zion. We remember thee, remember thee, remember thee, Zion. By the waters of Babylon.
All right, it's quite a beautiful rendition of this psalm. So we can see one snippet here in this psalm of how the Jews might have felt while they were in Babylon. They wept, they remembered Zion, they remembered Jerusalem, they may have suffered some as well. Here's the second half of the psalm, and so I just want to point out again this last verse right here. Happy shall they be who take your little ones and dash them against the rock. So undoubtedly some Jews did suffer at the hands of the Babylonians in the early years. But overall, the Babylonians did want the people that they resettled to thrive. It wasn't only the Jews who were resettled, but all the peoples who were conquered were shuffled around kind of in a big domino game in the Babylonian Empire. We're going to talk about a few theological developments. The first one is the rise of monotheism. The second is new ideas about what a Messiah is. And third, just very briefly, we're going to talk about the theological development of atonement. There are some historical developments that take place. So we've talked about exile already. We're going to talk about the rise of Cyrus the Great and the return of the Jews home. So let me tell you just a little bit about that now. After the Babylonian Empire, the next empire that is the latest and greatest are the Persians. They are also located in Mesopotamia. They conquered the Babylonians. I told you a little bit about that in class. It is a bloodless coup, so the story goes. And Cyrus the Great does something that's very innovative, and he gets lots of kudos for it. He allows all the people who have been exiled the choice on whether or not they would like to return home. Many of them took him up on his offer, including the Jewish people. So it's 539. They were exiled in 597 or 587. Very few original exiled people would have been still really alive or able to return. Those who were still alive were probably very elderly and probably children when they had left. So what we're talking about here is the second, third, fourth generations of people returning to their ancestral homeland that they don't necessarily remember. And that's going to be important. But they are going to love Cyrus for what he does. So let's turn in your People's Bible to Isaiah chapter 40. This is the beginning of 2nd Isaiah, who's located at the time of the return or shortly thereafter. So I'll give you just a minute and open your Bibles, and we're going to look at some of these verses together.